Hello, everybody, and welcome to another podcast. We are going to be talking about how to be open to finding a spouse.
Yes, the title for today is From Baggage to Marriage, God's Path to a Healthy Relationship. I have to admit that when Jeremy and I came into our relationship, we both may have been carrying a little bit of emotional luggage.
Yes, a little bit is an understatement.
And so because of that, I felt like this would be just a great conversation to have with anybody who is even considering moving into being available for God to bring you that special someone. Remember that the Bible says it is not good for man to be alone.
It's true. We need a woman.
They definitely need a woman.
Daily.
Yes. And so we're going to just jump in. Hopefully this is going to be helpful to any of you that are in that place where you're either thinking about a relationship, just starting in a relationship, somewhere in the midst of a relationship, or even those of you who are married. I hope there's something in this for you too.
All right, so I'm going to start this off with step number 1, which is surrender your life to God. So I'll tell a personal story here. I was really searching for God. I was in my 20s, early 20s, and things were not going well. And so I found Christ in an incredible way at a church that I was at in Brooklyn, New York. But I found Christ through my desperation. I was not in a good place, and I needed something. And when I found Christ, I opened up my hands to say, whatever you have for me, Lord, whatever you have for me. And so I think for a lot of people, it's coming into that surrender place of saying, God, your will be done, not my will be done. Would you agree?
I would agree. I mean, the thing I would say is I think the part of our lives that we are least willing to surrender to God is our romantic relationships.
Yeah, that's the hardest.
And we kind of, we grow up in this culture where you're watching all these romantic comedies. You're seeing all of these things in movie theaters that are like playing out in front of you. And unfortunately, I think that kind of seeps into us.
Yeah.
And then we sort of think it's up to us to decide what we're attracted to. And so the funny part about Jeremy and me is prior to our full surrender to God, we were not each other's type.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, Jeremy liked Latina spice.
I was like, okay, how you doing, baby? You know what's going on here. But you like the Latino men.
Well, I just liked people who were controlling and full of themselves. So my picker was absolutely broken. And really part of our journey, our spiritual journey, is that both of us had to not only yield our hearts to Christ for him to be Lord of our lives, but yield our relationships to Christ to say, you know what, God, I'm not going to be in charge of that part either.
Yeah.
And so I think step 1 in being ready for a relationship has to be full surrender to God, because I don't think you're fully surrendered to God until you yield to him what you're attracted to.
Yeah.
And so both of us had to do that in order for him to bring us something that was so much better than what we thought that we wanted.
It's so much better. And, she's also an excellent salsa dancer and speaks Spanish. So, God provided even more.
Un poquito.
Un poquito. But still, God gives you even more than you can imagine when you are open to whatever he has for you. So many times I would try to control that and say, well, this is the thing I need. This is the thing I want. This is where I'm at. And, a part of my surrendering was letting go of all of those things.
And ultimately, whenever you're out there looking on your own for what you need, so many times I think you're looking for things that you may have seen in your parents, things that you may have seen in your family. Some of those things might not be healthy or worth replicating, but it's kind of all you know, and there's a familiarity attached to that. And sometimes God needs to break that off of you because you don't actually want to replicate that in your own marriage.
Yeah.
And so I think for both of us, there was a season of full surrender that was necessary before we could ever even connect in a relationship.
Yeah. So coming full circle with all of this, we encourage you to surrender. Like whatever it is that you think you want or you think you need, or if I could only find that girl or that guy, surrender that to the Lord.
Yes, I love it. All right, step 2, seek healing for your past hurts. So Jeremy, talk to us about divorce.
Yeah, so I'm a product of divorce. My parents divorced when I was, I think, 14 years old, 13 or 14 years old. And, as any divorced child understands, that's a really hard time. And so I had a lot of pain and a lot of uncertainty and a lot of insecurity around all of that. And so I carried divorce with me into my any relationship. I was scared to step into whatever relationship would look like because of what happened in the past.
And I'm also the product of divorce. I actually married when I was 25 and I was divorced by the time I was 30. And I found myself in a place with the Lord after that where I felt like such a failure. I remember just like sitting in the floor of my apartment, honestly, you know, not even knowing how to move forward. I
Yeah.
think in moments like that, the enemy lies to you and he brings in despair, and despair says, it's always going to be like this and it's never going to get any better.
Yeah.
And so I was in a really dark place for a while, and the Lord met me there in the floor of my apartment. He saved my soul. And I remember sitting there with him and just finally bearing my heart to him and kind of admitting how devastated I was and how hurt I was. And there in the floor of my apartment, I had this vision of the love of God pouring into my head, where it went all the way down to my toes, and it came up and it filled me so much that it was flowing back out my head. And this was like a multiple night experience. It's like I would come home from work, I would sit down on the floor of my apartment, and I would just kind of yield my heart to the Lord. And He was healing me. He was putting me back together. He was making me whole again. And little did I know, within about 6 months of that encounter with the Lord, I was going to meet my husband. And I'm just so thankful, because if I had met him before that, you think I brought baggage in now. I had so much baggage and so much pain and so much hurt that I don't know that I could have even opened my heart to him. I don't know that I would have been available emotionally. And so I just encourage you, if you're in a place where you've just been through some stuff, you've made some mistakes. Guys, my divorce wasn't somebody else's fault. Like, I chose to marry a person without praying about it. And admitting that is really hard, and then walking forward through that and taking responsibility for my own actions is really hard. But when you do that in partnership with the Holy Spirit, He never condemns you. He always loves you, and His desire is to make you whole, and that you would just be His son or His daughter. And so I just encourage you, whatever that looks like, whatever pain you've walked through, it's not too much for the Lord.
Yeah.
And it's not your eventual relationship partner's problem to fix. I think one of the big issues that we get into is like we don't fix that. And then we go into them and we're like, heal me,
Right.
fix me,
Yeah.
love me enough that I feel better about myself. When that healing has to come from the Lord. And then when we're made whole, then we're actually available to really love somebody.
Well, I'll say too, one of the ways that God has been so good to us is, me having been through a divorce as a child and very nervous and scared to be a part of a relationship that, could end in divorce. I was bound and determined that I will never get a divorce, period, the end. Well, it kind of locked me up. But when I met Misty, knowing that she had been through a divorce, she understood the fear that I had as well, because she had already been through that experience. And so we both are sitting here across the table, two totally different perspectives, but saying, yeah, no, this is for life. Like, I see that in you. And we would have those conversations, just about the pain around those things. And neither of us wanted to ever inflict that on ourselves or our children or anything. So it's never even been a thing that we have ever even considered. But it all kind of stems back to that time where we're saying, I see you, I understand you, I know the things you have been through, and I'm here for you. And that is just God's blessing because of what we had been through.
And that's the beautiful thing about meeting the person that God has made for you. Because I felt like damaged goods. But when I met Jeremy, his whole thing was like, I don't ever want to go through a divorce again. And for him to meet someone who had been through divorce and who also was like, I never want to go through that again, it was not something that turned him away from me. It was something that made him feel safer with me.
Yeah.
And so I'll just say to you, as you are moving into a relationship, share the truth of who you are and what you've been through, because with the right person, those things will not run them off. Those may be actually the very things that deeply knit you together.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. All right, going on.
I got the next one.
Okay, go.
All right, so moving into openness. So we've talked about surrendering your life to God. We've talked about seeking healing for past hurts, and there are a number of other past hurts we could talk about, but not enough time. So the step 3 is moving into openness. So I went through a massive, massive spiritual growth in New York City, and in that time, God revealed to me what I was holding on to. Like there was that open-handedness that I had before, but I was gripping and holding on to fear when it came to relationships. I was like, the divorce happened. I'm gripping onto this. I will not get married. And I would even say that to my friends. I will not get married unless an angel of the Lord appears above her glowing and points going, it's this one. Like that's the only way I do it.
And that's actually what happened.
Well, in a lot of ways, it's kind of true. But I was like so unavailable and unwilling to step out into any relationship, no matter what, that I was hardened in that way.
Yeah. Well, here's the funny thing. Jeremy and I went on this date. Was it our second or third date?
I think it was, I don't know, second or third.
It was early on.
Very early.
But Jeremy now knew he liked me, so he took me to this really fancy restaurant. And it's New York City, so there's probably like this much space between our table and the table next to us. So we're at this fancy restaurant. First, we get there, and the lady at the door thinks my bag belongs with a different group. So she takes my bag to their table. So the first thing that happens is I think my purse got stolen.
Right, which is normal.
Yes, we finally get my purse back. Then we get to this table and we're this close to these two women from Long Island.
Closer than we are here.
And they are talking like Fran Drescher, like through their nose, really loudly about completely inappropriate things, very feminine things, private stuff. And they were so loud that we literally couldn't have a conversation.
Right.
So we gave up. We just ate our steak and listened to their insane conversation and just smirked at each other. And at some point during this terrible dinner that he was paying an arm and a leg for, Jeremy had the moment where it was like the angel hovered over me and it was like, this is your wife.
So let me just tell you how this happened. We're eating and we're just kind of smiling at each other and just being like, this is insane. This is crazy. And I'm about to take a bite of the steak or whatever we were eating. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me and was like, this is your wife. I mean, literally just like that. This is your wife. And in my heart, I had this impression of this is your wife. And I stopped and she wasn't paying attention because she was eating her food. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is how this happens. This is crazy. I'm going to marry her. It's like date 3.
And I felt so bad for him because even after that, we went to the car and he had like a $165 parking ticket because he'd parked in a bus zone. So he had like the biggest date fail, but we laughed about the whole thing. And I think that might have been part of it, is like my response to such bad things was just like,
Like, yeah, it happens. It's New York. What are you going to do? This is what happens.
Yeah, but in my case, the openness really just meant me saying to God, I am done picking.
Yeah.
Because as I mentioned before, my picker was broken. I had really terrible taste in men. And I was done. I was like, I am not looking. You're going to have to bring someone to me. And God did exactly that. Like, I had that conversation with him, and within 6 months of that, floor of my apartment encounter with him, I get a text from my cousin Phil. And my cousin Phil loves Jesus, and he's very funny. And he texted me and he said, are you single? And I knew that my cousin Phil would never introduce me to somebody who wasn't a believer, and probably any friend of my cousin Phil was going to be funny. And I thought to myself, I can go to coffee with loves Jesus and is funny. So without even asking for a picture of Jeremy, I texted him back and I said, I'm single and ready to mingle. And so then he contacts Jeremy,
spicy.
and the rest is history, right? And so my surrender was actually me surrendering trying. And that might be the case for somebody out there. You might have done all the online dating, you might have done all these things, but you might not have ever sat down with the Lord and said, God, I don't want to pick. I need you to bring someone to me, and to pray into that until he actually does that and sends them through somebody that you trust.
Yeah. So a part of my story too, in getting over the fear, was first recognizing that I had this stronghold in my life that I was holding on to, and God was working in me, saying, "Do you trust me? Do you trust me? Do you trust me?" And very slowly, just opening up my hand and saying, "Okay, I do trust you, Lord. I do trust you. I do trust you." And then finally, to the point where I'm like, you know what? Okay, I think I'm open to this. I think I'm open. And then, through that process, I meet Misty, and my life was forever changed from that experience.
For the better.
For the better. Because she's so spicy and she dances salsa.
Oh my goodness. All right, perfect. So now that we've gotten past the moving into openness phase, now let's talk about godly dating. So Jeremy, I would love for you to just talk to us, because Jeremy did such an incredible job of leading us in purity. In fact, it was maybe like our third date, maybe our fourth date. We really did not know each other very well at all.
I think it was our second date, because I think it was Indian food.
It was Indian. Was that our second date?
I think it was second date.
No, that wasn't our second date.
It wasn't? Okay.
No.
All right. So fourth or fifth.
I'm right, and he's wrong, because that's how it always works.
That never happens.
Anyway, we didn't know each other super well, and Jeremy opened up this conversation at dinner, because now it was clear that we were both really interested and serious.
Yeah.
And he looked across the table at me and he said, "This will not get physical." Yeah. And I don't even remember what else he said, but like that was the gist of it. And it was slightly awkward to have that conversation because we didn't know each other that well yet.
Right.
But in my heart, I was like, oh my gosh, do men like this still exist? I loved it. So I'd love for you to just talk to them about the ways that you thought about stewarding the purity of our dating life before marriage.
So, I'd done a lot of reading beforehand and preparation and prayerful thinking about all of this and what I wanted the relationships, whatever those would be in the future, to be like. And I knew I wanted purity. That was the most important thing for me. And so, when I met Misty and I'm like, wow, she's really cute, and wow, we're getting along really well and everything seems to be going really good, I'm like, I don't want to screw this up. And I have found in my life, when I've seen relationships or experienced this, where it's messed up because there's been no purity there. There's been nothing to hold to the relationship accountable. And I'm like, I am going to be the one who holds this accountable. I'm going to be the one who steps in and says, hey, here's a boundary line, which is very, very rare for a man to do nowadays, right? I mean, that just doesn't happen very often. And so I knew that setting that boundary was going to be really important. So the first thing I did was have this conversation with her about not getting physical. And I said, it's not that I'm not attracted to you at all. It's that I don't want us to go into places that will cause confusion in our minds or confusion amongst the chemistry between us. I want to get to know you as a person, not you physically. The second thing I did was we talked and set some boundaries for things that we were not going to do. I will not go to your apartment in the evenings. I will not stay alone with you in for extended periods of time or anything like that. We would go to movies, we do all kinds of things like that, but just setting boundaries that were thought out and clear to say, I'm not looking for this physical side of you, because a lot of times people want to jump into a marriage relationship way before they actually commit to that person. I wanted to commit first, and then we would have the marriage relationship once we're actually committed and married to each other.
One of the things I love that Jeremy did is every time he would pick me up, he would lead us in prayer in his car and just like pray for our date. And so it was just really small things that he did like that. And you guys, we didn't kiss. And P.S., we're dating in our 30s, right?
Right, yeah.
We didn't kiss until about a week and a half before we got engaged. right? And I don't mean like officially engaged with the ring, but I mean like Jeremy came back and said to me, like, how would you feel about getting married? And I was like, let's do
And
this.
this is 2.5 months or 2 months after we met each other?
Yeah. And so I just
Yeah.
say that to say it was so refreshing to be with someone who was willing to kind of set those boundaries. And here's what's so beautiful. When Jeremy recommitted his life to Christ in his 20s, he wrote a letter to his future wife, not knowing me yet, about how he was going to save himself from that point forward for her for the wedding night. And on our wedding night, Jeremy presented me with that letter. And I cried like a baby because this man was giving me this gift. So I just encourage you, it is not an impossible dream to keep yourself pure, even if you have made mistakes in your past.
Right.
God is the one who is the restorer of all things. And so we got to experience that, having made mistakes in our past, to walk into our marriage in purity. And it's been a great foundation for us.
It's been an incredible foundation. It has been, I think because we did that, we now have a trust that is way, way deeper than anything we ever could have imagined, and a flourishing in our relationship greater than anything we could have imagined because of that. And, it's interesting. We dated and we're married within 10 months.
Yeah.
Right? Very short period of time, but because of the purity in that short amount of time, it has been exponentially beneficial for our 15 years now of marriage. So.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Step
right.
number 5.
Step number 5, how to know if you have met the one. All right, you ready? We're gonna lock it down. Misty, tell us, how do people know if they have met the one?
Well,
this is all you need to watch.
I mean, here's what I'll say. Don't date in a vacuum, right? If you look at marriage in the Bible, you'll see Abraham sending his servant to go pick someone from his clan for his son.
Right.
And I would say that the main thing that I felt going into my relationship with Jeremy was this: I don't trust myself because I've really screwed up in the past. So I was like, people who are not in love and who don't have a horse in the race, who I trust, are gonna have to vouch for this person. And please don't be like me and have to be burned first before you figure that out. Because the people around you, your parents, your siblings, the people who love you the most, they know you, they know what you need, they love the Lord, and they are gonna want the best for you.
Yeah.
And so I would just encourage you, like as you're dating, look around to the people that you know and say, what do you think about this guy? Because part of what happened with Jeremy is everybody that I knew who knew him was just saying, this is a great person, this is a strong man, this is a kind man, this is a godly man. And it gave me so much confidence, because I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself, but I did have confidence in my tribe that they were going to point me in the right direction.
Yes. And I would say for myself, it was this exact same thing that she just said, but also the confirmations, one way or the other. So, you will get a confirmation that is like, one funny example of this is we're driving down the highway. I just picked her up from her apartment, and we're heading somewhere. And I admit to her that it has just been my birthday and that I karaoke for every birthday. I have a big, huge party, and we all karaoke, and I'm kind of obsessed with karaoke. And she looks at me with this little twinkle in her eye, and she says, I've been going to the same karaoke place for 13 years, and we're going this weekend. And so, it's a little thing, but that's actually a pretty big deal, because that was something I really loved, and she did too. Another funny story is the story of the socks, right? I had a relationship that did not go well, and I would always wear different types of socks because I can never put my socks together, apparently. And this other person was very mean to me about silly things like that. I'm telling Misty this story while we're sitting in church one day, and she again looks at me with a twinkle in her eye. She unzips these knee-high boots that she's wearing, and she has 2 completely different pairs of socks on as I'm telling her this story. And you think back about that and you're like, that was God just being like, little nudge, like, this is your person.
Yeah.
This is your person.
Yeah.
This is your person.
Yeah.
In addition to all the friendships, and all my friends were pushing me towards her, saying, she's amazing, she's incredible, go, run, go, go, go. In fact, Misty has a funny story to tell about this, don't
So
you?
Jeremy and I were in charge of the 30s ministry at our church with like a number of other couples.
Right.
And we had an event, and we went to a huge church in New York City. And so we had rented out this restaurant to have the event. Way more people showed up for that event than the restaurant could handle.
True.
And so it's just a mob scene. No one can get enough food. And so a bunch of Jeremy's girlfriends say to me, hey, Jeremy's really busy. He's, working the event. Let's just go down the street really quick and we're going to grab some Thai food. I'm like, sure, let's go grab some Thai food. So I go, it's like the pastor's wife
Yes.
and like his two best friends, female friends. And so we leave and then we go to like this legit Thai place that's like a sit down place. And now we're like waiting for the food, and I'm there and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like a sit down place. But it's like the pastor's wife who's invited me out. It's like Jeremy's friend. I want them to like me. And so then we're sitting there and I'm just like waiting for the food to come, and I'm realizing it's been like 45 minutes. Now it's been like an hour. Little did I know Jeremy is over there seething because he thinks I've abandoned him at the event. And so finally I get back and we're getting in the car, and like the husband of the pastor's wife that I'm with like looks at Jeremy and he's like, you don't let her get away with this.
He was so mad.
You let this start right now. It's going to be this way for your whole marriage. And so the whole way home, Jeremy is livid and he's not talking to me. He's just
so
driving.
Mad. Passive
so
aggressive mad. Passive aggressive.
And I thought like maybe this is over. I'm trying to like impress his friends, but I actually made him feel abandoned. But anyway, when it was all said and done, all of his female friends from the church called him, and talked him down off the ledge. And they were like, Misty's awesome. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah,
like, she was just trying to get to know your friends. Like, she wasn't trying to abandon you.
Yeah. They were like, you are an... So, all right.
Tell your side of the story.
I call up my friend and I'm like, the next day, because I'm like, she's amazing. I really want to be with her, and I feel like God's talked to me about it, but this thing happened and I'm not okay with this. So I call up one of my female best friends, and she gets on the phone and says, Jeremy, you're an idiot. She's like, she's amazing, and we all were having a good time getting to know her. Stop being an idiot. And I was like, oh, I guess I am being an idiot. So I called her. I think I apologized, and we worked it out.
It all worked out.
And here we are.
But the point is this. You might have little squabbles. You might have things that come up. Like, don't do those things in a vacuum, because the people who love you are going to be able to talk you down off the ledge and be like, hey, don't break up with this person. This is the best person you've ever dated.
Right.
Like, you guys should keep going. And so I think that's the most important piece as you're looking at, like, how do I know that they're the one? The other thing I'll say is this. Jeremy and I have been in ministry a long time, and here's what we see. One of two things happen when people start dating.
Yeah.
They either push together deeper into ministry, or whoever is the person who is least engaged and least passionate pulls the other out of ministry.
Right. It's true.
And so I would just encourage you to watch for that. If you're somebody right now who's consistently serving in an area in the church, and you start to date someone and they not only don't serve, but they don't want you to serve, I would question that, because the Bible talks a lot about how whatever gifts God gave you, use those for His glory. That's a command. And so you want to make sure that whoever you're partnered with also values those same things. Because guys, there's a lot of people who go to church who don't actually have any interest in serving the Lord. There's a difference between getting your get out of hell free card and actually wanting to labor on behalf of Jesus and be His hands and feet on this earth. And so just watch out for that, because that's a telltale sign. And what we love to see is when there are two people who it's like what happened for us. We were both already locked in with Christ, but when we locked in together, it was like an accelerator was hit in our ministry lives.
It's true.
And we both just locked arms and we were serving everywhere that we could. 30s ministry, in the choir. When we got here, like Jeremy's doing media, I'm doing the choir, we're doing youth together, we're doing prayer meetings together. I mean, you name it. If there's something ministry related happening, he's not having to do it alone.
Right.
I'm not having to do it alone. I've got somebody to lock arms with, even when it's 2 a.m. and we're like at the church praying. I don't got to do that by myself. And you shouldn't have to do that by yourself either.
Yeah, and I would say too, oftentimes what happens is you get into a relationship and that person starts to say, if they are not as invested, they'll start to say things like, hey, let's just sleep in this Sunday. Let's not go. We don't need to go to the Wednesday night service. And are you really going to go to church again? Why are you always at the church? And you start to get into that place of, well, I really want to be with this person. I think they're a good person. I think everything's well. And what happens is they're slowly pulling you away, and you're allowing yourself to be pulled away because you want to be in that relationship. And so I would encourage you to look at that relationship from the perspective of, is this relationship God glorifying or self glorifying? Does it make God happy or is it making you happy? What's the difference between those two places? Because God wants the best for you. Your joy, your pure joy and pure happiness comes from serving Him and following after Him. If this person's pulling you away, it may feel good for a season, but it will inevitably end in tears. And we've seen it so many times.
Well, here's the crazy thing that we see happen that drives us crazy as leaders is people coming into the church or even growing up in the church, but being there long enough to find a spouse and then spending the rest of their adult life pulling that person out of church.
Right.
And here's what you don't know. You don't want that person unsaved.
Right.
Because
you don't want them out of church.
You don't want them out of church because none of us are good. No, not one. No. And the only thing that makes us good is when we yield our lives to Christ, let the Holy Spirit work through us and let Him actually transform us from the inside out.
Right.
And so, but it drives me crazy because I see people do that. It's they come in, they kind of serve long enough to get someone, then they kind of pull them out. And guys, we've watched it.
Over
2, 3, 4 years later, that couple's marriage has fallen apart, and the thing that they thought they had, they've lost. And the reason they lost it is because they didn't keep Christ at the center of the relationship.
Yeah.
And so I just encourage you, notice that as you're figuring out, is this my person? Because if you're somebody who feels called into ministry or you love running after Jesus, you will be miserable when you feel kind of stuck and you're ugh, if I'm at church all the time, my spouse is going to feel like I'm abandoning them. If I'm always harassing them to go to church, that's going to bother them. It's a terrible position to put yourself in. And so when you're making your relationship decisions, just don't put yourself in that position. Find somebody who's zealous, who's sold out, and who's running as hard after Jesus as you are. And then just watch how your relationship actually isn't even about how much you love each other. It's you now become Wonder Twin powers activate. And you can do so much more together than you could have ever done by yourself.
And I know we're talking a lot about this, but another piece of it too is a lot of times people are in ministry together and they're stepping out together, but one of those people does not have a longevity in ministry. They've just gotten back to the Lord. They've just come back to Christ. And they're walking along and all of a sudden they're oh, hey, who's that attractive person? Oh, let's take a left. And they've veered off that path. And so oftentimes we'll be hey, no, get back on the path, walk together, be together. But there's that distraction that takes place. So watch out for that distraction. Because that distraction oftentimes will derail what God is trying to do as you're heading towards Him.
That's a word, mockingbird. All right, step 6, moving towards marriage. So I want to start this one, and I just want to say this. When you know, you know.
You know?
And I remember people saying that to me whenever I was single, and I kind of wanted to throat punch them. Because, when you're single and you don't want to be single, you're where's my person? And, but they're exactly right. When you meet the person that God has for you, you will not have to twist yourself into a pretzel. You will not have to pretend to be someone that you're not. You will not have to throw out everything that you're interested in order to become interested in what they're interested in. When it's God's partner for you, it's going to be so clear. And so when it becomes that clear, what I would say to you is what Jeremy's sister and brother-in-law said to him, like a month after we met. He came home for Christmas break and he was like, I met this girl. I'm going to marry her. And in the conversation, they basically were like, if you're going to marry her, what are you waiting for? And so we had been dating like 6 weeks, maybe?
Maybe.
Maybe not even 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And he came home from that trip with workbooks called Saving Your Marriage Before It Starts.
Highly recommend.
And he presented those to me and he was like, how about we get married? And I was like, I was just waiting for you to ask. And we were married within 9 months of that conversation.
Yeah.
And so I just say that to say, I'm not trying to rush anybody, but I am saying, when you found your person, and you don't need to be engaged for 4 years and wait around. Like, when you know, and move towards marriage in a way that is healthy and makes sense to both of you.
Yes. So the word I would say with all of that is lead. Men lead. Take leadership. Take initiative. I was the one that came to her and said, hey, this is working out pretty good. And she's like, mm-hmm. And I said,
I was like
maybe heading to marriage good. She's like, mm-hmm. I said, I think we should get married. She's like, mm-hmm. And I'm like, and I got workbooks. And she's like, wow, this is real. We're going in. I led in that. And not just in that. I led in other things as well.
He said, I love you first.
I said, I love you first. I kissed you first.
That's true.
I took her to church. Right? I was the one who initiated. I went and picked her up.
He would come pick me up, and I lived like an hour from him.
He lived in Midtown Manhattan.
He lived in Brooklyn.
I live in South Brooklyn.
We went to church in Brooklyn, and he would drive from Brooklyn to Manhattan and back to Brooklyn to bring me to church.
So that is leading, right? And she is a strong woman. There's not anybody watching this who doesn't know that that's true. But every strong woman needs a man who's going to be strong in ways that she needs us to be strong. So I'd say take her to church. I served in ministry, and she thankfully was like, I want to do that with you. I want to get plugged in with you. I want to help with you. And so I'm like, great, come on. This is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. This is what we're going to do. I'm going to get mad at you at one point, and my friend's going to have to talk me off the ledge, but we're going to make it. But she served with me in ministry, and not just that 30s ministry. She was doing things in the choir. She was in the drama ministry with me.
Whatever he was doing, I did. And here's the thing I'll say. And I know in our society, it's like people, I think because there has been a disparity in equality, that there has been this sense of like, oh, we don't want to talk about the fact that the man is supposed to be the leader biblically.
That's true.
But the thing I want to say about that is that does not negate our equality. We are equals.
Yes.
According to Scripture, God made us male and female, and one is not better or higher than the other. However, the man is meant to be the leader. And when he leads, I feel like I am like released. Like I don't have the pressure of saying I love you first. I don't have the pressure of bringing up marriage first. I don't have the pressure of being like, I've been going to Times Square Church. You go to the Brooklyn Tabernacle. Where should we go to church, right? I don't have the pressure of that. And so to me, it's very freeing to have my husband be such a strong leader because I have to make a gazillion decisions today as a mother and a wife and a person who has a job. And I actually love not having to decide everything. And so I just encourage you, like, don't feel like this is an archaic idea. It is, number one, a biblical idea. But number two, it's actually a gift to the wife for the husband to lead.
And the last thing I would say about this is that we should pray together.
Yeah.
I led in prayer. We would get into the car before a date, and I would pray.
Yeah.
And that may sound really, super duper holy people type stuff, but
I don't think so.
I know you don't think so, but I believe that is a part of the covering that is over us. And in our relationship, I wanted God's blessing and God's covering, because again, we're talking about moving towards marriage, right? So oftentimes couples will turn towards each other and will be like, I need you to fix this in me. And here I'm going to dump some of my junk on you, and you need to figure out what to do with that. None of that is meant for a couple. None of that is meant for the other person. It's meant for God.
Right.
Until you have that relationship, that direct link to God, you can't be fully connected. You know,
Yeah.
you've heard the triangle analogy of two people standing here, and God's up here. The closer they get to God, the closer they get to each other in that triangle. So as you're going towards God, you're really pursuing each other.
Yeah.
So leading in prayer was a big piece of in Bible reading as well. You know, I gave you a devotional as a birthday gift, I think, in August. And, you know, just those kinds of things were leading you spiritually as well.
Yeah.
And preparing ourselves that I would be the priest of our home,
Yeah.
a biblical concept.
Yeah. So even prior to marriage, I just encourage every man to be thinking in that way and setting yourself up in that way. And then for the women, I would say accept the gift of leadership. It genuinely is a gift. And I think sometimes one of the things that can get out of order in relationships is that, and especially if we come damaged, we might think like this is only going to work out if I muscle my way onto the top and I'm making the decisions about where we go to church and I'm making the decisions about who we have relationships with and who we don't and all of those things. And it's like when we get that out of order, the grace of the Lord doesn't flow down into our home in the same way. And so even as you're dating, I think you can set that up.
Yep, that's
All
good.
right. So as a final word, if you take one thing away from this conversation, it's this. Godly relationships start with surrender to God, healing from our past, and making a commitment to honor Him in the way you date. And here's the thing you need to know. When you get these foundations in place, you're not just building towards a wedding, you're building towards a marriage that will actually last.
Yes, so my advice is to go out and have coffee with someone that you might be interested in. Get to know them, say hi to them, just do something. Step out, don't be scared, trust God, prayerfully do all of these things. And we hope that you are going to find that special person in your life. So thank you so much for watching the podcast. We love you. We are going to pray for you. We thank you for watching us, and we'll see you next time.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.